February 18, 2001, Foxstone Park, Vienna, Virginia, 4 p.m. A senior FBI agent walks along a quiet trail carrying a plastic bag. Inside it, classified documents detailing U.S. intelligence operations. Minutes later, he places the package beneath a footbridge, an established dead-drop location, and turns to leave. He is not meeting anyone, but he is not being watched, at least not by anyone he knows. What he does not realize is that the FBI has been waiting for this exact moment. Within seconds, agents move in. The man they arrest is not an outsider, he is one of their own. For more than 20 years, he had worked inside the Bureau's counterintelligence division, the very unit responsible for catching foreign spies. During that time, critical U.S. assets were exposed. At least 3 individuals identified as working for the United States inside Russia were executed. Entire operations collapsed without explanation. The damage was not immediate, IT unfolded slowly, invisibly, across decades. And yet, the break in the case did not begin with surveillance technology or intercepted transmissions. It began with 6 words that pointed not outward, but inward. The question investigators faced was simple, but deeply unsettling. How does a system designed to detect spies fail to detect one at its core? By the time of his arrest in 2001, the scale of the breach had already been measured in irreversible losses. Robert Hansen had compromised some of the most sensitive counterintelligence operations conducted by the United States during the final years of the Cold War and into the post-Soviet era. According to Department of Justice records, he provided thousands of pages of classified material to Soviet and later Russian intelligence services. Among the most consequential disclosures were the identities of U.S. assets operating inside the Soviet Union. At least 3 of those individuals, Dmitry Polyakov, Sergei Motrin, and Valery Martinov, were arrested and executed by Soviet authorities after being exposed. In addition to human intelligence losses, Hansen revealed technical operations. One of the most damaging involved a secret FBI tunnel constructed beneath the Soviet embassy in Washington, designed to intercept communications. The project, costing millions of dollars, was rendered useless once disclosed. The financial cost of Hansen's espionage exceeded $1.4 million in cash, diamonds, and bank deposits received from Russian handlers. But the operational costs extended far beyond measurable figures. Dozens of intelligence efforts were compromised or abandoned. Years of investigative work were invalidated, and within the FBI itself, the implications were unprecedented. Hansen was not a peripheral employee. He had direct access to counterintelligence databases, internal investigations, and surveillance strategies, which meant the breach did not come from outside pressure or a single lapse in protocol. It came from sustained access, exercised over 22 years, inside one of the most security-conscious institutions in the world. The outcome raised a question that could not be ignored. How could this have remained undetected for so long? At the time Hansen operated, the Federal Bureau of Investigation functioned as both a domestic law enforcement agency and a central pillar of U.S. counterintelligence. Its counterintelligence division was specifically tasked with identifying and neutralizing foreign espionage threats operating within the United States. This included monitoring diplomatic personnel, tracking suspected intelligence officers, and protecting classified information from compromise. The system was built on layered safeguards. Access to classified material was controlled through clearance levels and compartmentalization. Sensitive programs were divided so that no single individual could easily obtain a complete operational picture. Internal audits, supervisory reviews, and security protocols were designed to detect irregularities. Employees with high-level clearance, like Hansen, underwent periodic background checks. Financial disclosures were required in certain cases. Unusual behavior, if observed, could be reported through internal channels. Additionally, the FBI maintained an internal security structure responsible for investigating misconduct within the Bureau itself. The expectation was clear. Even if an external adversary attempted to penetrate the system, internal controls would detect anomalies. And historically, the FBI had successfully identified spies before. Cases such as Aldrich Ames had already demonstrated the risks of insider threats. In response, procedures were strengthened and awareness of internal espionage increased across intelligence agencies. By the 1990s, the prevailing assumption within the Bureau was that its safeguards, while not infallible, were sufficient to detect prolonged and authorized activity. Yet Hansen operated within this environment without triggering decisive intervention. He accessed classified systems. He removed sensitive documents. He communicated with foreign intelligence. And for over 2 decades, these actions did not result in exposure, which suggests the failure was not the absence of safeguards, but something more structural within how they were applied. Robert Philip Hansen joined the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 1976. He entered as a special agent and was eventually assigned to counterintelligence roles, positions that required analyzing foreign intelligence threats and managing sensitive information related to espionage investigations. Hansen's professional background was not atypical for the Bureau. He held a degree in accounting and later pursued graduate studies in business and information systems. His technical proficiency, particularly in data systems and internal databases, became a defining aspect of his work. Over time, he developed familiarity with the FBI's internal computer networks, including systems used to store classified intelligence. This access was significant. It allowed him to review investigative files, surveillance records, and identities of individuals under U.S. protection or cooperation. Throughout his career, Hansen worked in various units, including assignments focused on Soviet intelligence activities. These roles place him in proximity to some of the FBI's most sensitive operations during a period of active espionage between the United States and the Soviet Union. He was not operating on the margins of the organization. He was embedded within its core function. Colleagues generally regarded him as reserved and methodical. There is no consistent evidence in official records that he attracted sustained internal scrutiny during the majority of his career. Performance evaluations did not identify him as a high-risk individual. At the same time, Hansen maintained long-term access to classified materials with relatively limited direct supervision in certain assignments. Like many experienced agents, he operated with a degree of autonomy once trust had been established. His position combined 3 critical elements: access to sensitive intelligence, technical capability to navigate internal systems, and institutional trust built over years of service. There is no single documented moment in his early career that clearly signaled a breach. Instead, the conditions that enabled his actions were embedded in routine operational structures that assumed individuals in his position would act within the system's rules. This is where the story changes. The deviation did not begin with a single dramatic act. It began with an activity that, in isolation, did not immediately trigger alarms. By 1979, only a few years after joining the FBI, Hansen initiated contact with Soviet intelligence. According to later court records, he provided classified information in exchange for payment. After a period of inactivity in the early 1980s, he resumed espionage in 1985, this time with greater consistency and operational discipline. During this second phase, patterns began to emerge. Hansen accessed information not strictly required for his assigned duties. He reviewed files related to ongoing counterintelligence operations and individuals under investigation, including Soviet officials and suspected double agents. These actions were recorded within internal systems, but they were not immediately flagged as violations. At the time, database monitoring tools were limited. Access logs existed, but systematic analysis of user behavior, particularly for trusted personnel, was not consistently enforced. At the same time, Hansen demonstrated an awareness of surveillance risks. He avoided direct meetings with handlers. He used anonymous communication methods, including encrypted or coded messages left in designated locations. And he selected information carefully, prioritizing material with high intelligence value but low immediate visibility. There were indicators: unusual financial patterns, irregular document access, behavior that, in hindsight, aligned with known espionage tradecraft. But these signals remained fragmented. No single department had a complete view, and without centralized analysis, the divergence remained undetected. Not because there were no warning signs, but those signs never converged into a single, actionable conclusion. Hansen's method was not built on speed. It was built on duration. From the mid-1980s onward, his approach followed a consistent pattern: minimize exposure, maximize value, and avoid direct human contact. He did not operate like a traditional field agent. Instead of meetings, he relied on dead drops, prearranged locations where materials could be left and later retrieved by Russian intelligence officers. One of the most frequently used sites was in parks within the Washington, D.C. area, including the same location where he would eventually be arrested. Communication was structured but indirect. Han-Sen used coded messages, sometimes embedded in letters or signals left at designated sites, to indicate when materials had been delivered. In return, payments, cash or valuables, were left at separate locations. There were no face-to-face exchanges. This eliminated one of the most common points of failure in espionage operations. The selection of information followed a deliberate logic. Han-Sen prioritized material that exposed long-term U.S. intelligence capabilities rather than short-term tactical data. This included identities of covert sources, technical surveillance methods, and internal investigative strategies. Such disclosures had delayed consequences. They did not always trigger immediate operational failure, which reduced the likelihood of rapid detection. At the same time, Han-Sen took steps to conceal his activity within the FBI's internal systems. He accessed files during routine work hours. He avoided excessive or repetitive queries that might stand out, and he relied on the assumption that senior agents were less likely to be scrutinized in detail. The risks were substantial. Any surveillance of drop sites, any audit of access logs, any correlation between compromised operations and internal data access could have exposed a pattern. But those connections required coordination across multiple units, and that coordination did not occur in time. The plan did not depend on invisibility. It depended on fragmentation, on the absence of a system capable of seeing the full picture at once. The final phase of the investigation did not begin with surveillance. It began with information purchased from a foreign intelligence service. In the late 1990s, U.S. authorities obtained a file from Russian sources containing materials linked to an unidentified mole inside the FBI. The transaction reportedly cost approximately $7 million. The file included operational details, communication methods, and, critically, a set of fingerprints and a voice recording associated with the individual. The identity was not immediately clear, but the evidence narrowed the field. Investigators within the FBI's internal security units began cross-referencing the materials against known personnel. Fingerprint became a decisive factor. When matched against internal records, they pointed to one individual, Robert Han-Sen. From that point, the approach shifted. The Bureau did not move immediately to arrest. Instead, it initiated controlled surveillance. Han-Sen was reassigned in late 2000 to a position at FBI headquarters that limited his access to highly sensitive information. At the same time, his activities were monitored closely. His office computer was placed under surveillance, and investigators documented his movements and communications. The objective was not just identification. It was confirmation through action. Agents needed to observe him engaging in espionage behavior in real time. By early 2001, Han-Sen resumed contact using his established methods. He prepared a package containing classified documents. He selected a dead drop location, Foxstone Park in Vienna, Virginia, consistent with prior patterns identified through a Russian file. On February 18, 2001, surveillance teams were in position. Han-Sen arrived alone. He carried a plastic bag containing the documents. He walked along a path toward a footbridge, an area previously used for exchanges. He placed the package beneath the structure. Then he turned to leave. At that moment, FBI agents moved in. The arrest was immediate. There was no exchange, no handler present, no attempt to flee. Han-Sen was taken into custody at the site. Subsequent searches of his belongings and residence produced additional evidence, including materials linked to his communications with Russian intelligence. In the weeks that followed, he was formally charged. Facing overwhelming evidence, Han-Sen entered a plea agreement to avoid the death penalty. He pleaded guilty to 15 counts of espionage and related charges. The execution of the operation, both his and the Bureau's, ended at the same location. A system that had failed to detect him for over 2 decades had finally observed him in the act. The arrest of Robert Hansen triggered one of the most extensive internal damage assessments in the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Within days, joint investigative teams from the FBI, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Department of Justice began evaluating the full scope of compromise operations. The process was complex. Many of the disclosures had occurred years earlier, and in some cases, the consequences, such as the loss of human assets, had already taken place without a confirmed cause at the time. Hansen formally pleaded guilty in July 2001. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole and was transferred to the Federal Supermax facility, ADX Florence, where he would remain in near total isolation. Institutionally, the response focused on systemic failure. Internal reviews identified significant gaps in oversight, particularly regarding the monitoring of employee activity within classified systems. The Bureau acknowledged that access controls existed, but enforcement and analysis were inconsistent. In response, new counterintelligence protocols were introduced. These included enhanced auditing of database access, stricter financial disclosure requirements, and the creation of more centralized units responsible for detecting insider threats. The case also prompted broader reforms across the U.S. intelligence community. Agencies increased coordination in identifying anomalous behavior among personnel with high-level clearances. The financial cost of the damage remained difficult to quantify, but the operational loss, measured in compromised sources, exposed methods, and institutional trust, was considered one of the most severe in modern U.S. intelligence history. The Hansen case did not expose a failure of intelligence collection. It exposed a failure of internal visibility. The system surrounding him was not absent. It was extensive, layered, and procedurally defined. Access controls existed. Logs were maintained. Oversight mechanisms were formally in place. But these elements operated in isolation rather than as an integrated whole. No single failure explains the outcome. Instead, the case reveals how distributed responsibility can dilute accountability. Hansen's actions were recorded. His database queries, his access patterns, his long-term exposure to sensitive files. But those records were not continuously analyzed in a way that could identify behavioral anomalies over time. Institutional trust played a role. Senior personnel were granted operational autonomy based on tenure and clearance, reducing the likelihood of intrusive scrutiny. In practice, this created asymmetry. The individuals with the greatest access were often subject to the least detailed monitoring. The structure assumed that threats would emerge from outside the system. Hansen demonstrated that the more consequential risk could develop internally, gradually, and without immediate disruption. The case ultimately illustrates a specific type of vulnerability, not the absence of safeguards, but the inability to connect them. And in complex systems, that gap can remain invisible until the damage is already complete. Years before Hansen's arrest, another insider, Aldrich Ames, had already demonstrated how internal access could bypass entire intelligence systems. Despite reforms that followed, similar patterns reappeared. The question that remained unresolved was not whether the system could fail again, but whether it could recognize the same failure in a different form.